Hello, I'm Lucas. This is Strike the Sun MD, and I would like to talk about Tarkin, a novel by James Luceno. If I don't know if I got his last name right, please forgive me. And it's part of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, and it follows Grand Moff Tarkin, who is a cutthroat son of a gun that is ruthless and has a bit of an ego and is incredibly intelligent and conniving and just so brutal, and I love it. He's not any different than any sort of monster you might find in history. He's definitely not worse than anyone you might find in history that has all those attributes, but it's still good fun, and he does feel like his own person, a fully realized character study, if you will, in this novel. And it follows him when he starts off in Sentinel Base, which is a far off base, far from sort of the center of the galaxy, the center of the Empire, which, if you listen to common wisdom, the farther out you are from the center, the less you are respected. Though he is a Moff, so it does seem strange that he's sent out there, but there's a special Imperial enterprise, the Death Star, that Moff Tarkin, as he is in the beginning of this novel, has ties to from Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, who plays a great role in the rise of Tarkin himself. As we find out, they met early on in Tarkin's life, I believe when he was 18 at the earliest, after he dealt with some pirate rebels interfering with his planet's economy by all their criminal actions. And the way he does it to take the leader and make sure that this woman, who has escaped from multiple jails and lost body parts and still has this growing base of support, that he sends a very clear and direct message by shooting her into the sun with an intercom on and broadcasting them essentially melting. Just how brutal and serious he is about keeping order and bringing order to chaos, which is exactly the kind of planet he's from, Eriadu. And we learn about his trials there that his family put him through when his family is the sort of leading family, or the leading family of the planet. And his father says, you need to prove yourself. And everyone around him sort of gives him this idea that the only thing that's important is striving for power, essentially, and making sure there is a specific set order of who's in control and who will obey, who will give commands and who will obey. And they test him by sending him to a part of the planet, the Carrion Spike, that is incredibly dangerous, and they know that it's possible for him to die. But if he does, so be it. He wasn't strong enough. That's the way it is. But if he can master how to live there, I believe his uncle trains him with some other people. If he can go through the trials there that he needs to prove himself, he will be worthy, and he will learn incredibly valuable lessons on how to handle anything. And all the lessons that he learns, as I mentioned with the pirate woman, he takes to such extremes that you just know he's not to be trifled with. And this is not the only time that he proves himself within the context of his life that we get to see in the book as a cutthroat psychopath. Anyway, I bring all that up to say that, he becomes governor of Eriadu, and he gets a lot of support from the Emperor. And, the way that he governs is very sort of nationalistic. He brings Eriadu into the Empire, sort of as a sort of beacon of hope for, I believe the phrase used is something along the effect of planets ready or willing to be exploited. He brings Eriadu to the forefront and sort of modernizes everything in horrifying nationalist ways that are very xenophobic to foreigners taking land. And I mean, just some of the actions he takes are crazy, but competent. Horrible, but unlike... Anyway, he gets support from Palpatine, who has private supporters, invisible supporters, who also invisibly support him. And Coruscant bases a lot of what it does around what Governor Tarkin is able to do. At the beginning of this novel, he's at the Sentinel base, and this feed comes in that has been faked about an attack on Rampart Station. And to show how clever he is, including everything else that happens throughout this novel, Tarkin analyzes this carefully, and he figures out that it's fake to drive away some forces from Sentinel Base. But he isn't quite able to figure out what to make of it all. Then he has to go meet the Emperor, who mentions to him this situation, but he also says that you're going to go on a mission with Darth Vader to find this cache of communications cache on this planet, Murkana, I believe. And you're going to go talk to the governor of that planet, or the representative of the Empire from that planet. I can't remember the title. I believe it was just governor. And find out what's going on. And we could do this through the Empire, but I just want to cut through all the bureaucratic red tape and send you out there. They take the Carrion Spike, his ship that he has modified and designed himself. And when they're there, they're talking with the representative of the government there, and a rebel cell takes the ship. And for the next sort of 250 pages, Tarkin and Darth Vader, who are at odds with each other because they both want to do their best to serve their leader, the Emperor. But they don't really see eye to eye with each other, and they don't relate well in any way. The showing all three of these characters in all their facets, it adds a lot of depth to them. I mean, Darth Vader comes off as a psychopathic murderer who has no ability to calm himself. He just lets his rage flow through him. But he is very smart. And he can see right through things, and I mean, he has the Force, so of course he can. The Emperor, he's also able to see 3 steps ahead of everything. And we get to see Tarkin himself reason through everything. They're all very intelligent, but they have their own way of showing it. And when they rub up against each other, there is a definite difference in their personalities and how they react to each other. So they feel fully realized. I do love how Darth Vader and Tarkin, they don't necessarily come to, like, I don't want to say respect each other. I'm not saying that they never do. They, like I said, they don't see eye to eye, but they start to listen to each other and relate and bond with each other. And it's very strange, but their relationships are really fun and fascinating. And all the politics in here, I'd have to say, you know, it feels very pulpy, but it feels like the main plot is this chase for the carrion spike, because it's going to be used for rebel propaganda to incite rebellions throughout the Empire. So that can't happen, because we know in A New Hope, the Empire is, there's rebels, but the Empire is still very strong and fairly unified from what I recall. I know there's plenty of rebels, but things can't ever be drastically changed story-wise in a grand scope, because it's only to expand the universe. We have this great threat, and even though you know what's going to happen, Moff Tarkin is going to win, and he's going to become a Grand Moff for his efforts, and he's going to be put in charge of the Death Star and all this other stuff. And you know how Vader's going to handle things, and you know how the Emperor's going to handle things, and you know how Tarkin's going to handle things, but there's still, that is something that works against it, because you know the bad guys are going to win. They have to win, because of what we already know about the future. Eventually they will lose, but oh god, I just reminded myself of the Rise of Skywalker. Anyway, it's good fun. I recommend this book. It was really fun to read an expanded universe book of a world that I only know through film. I was not expecting the politics that, as I was trying to say before I started rambling, they're quick and to the point, but they feel like there's nepotism in this, and there's trying to avoid bureaucracy and doing things that you shouldn't, because that's not how things are supposed to be done in the empire that you've built. And you know, there's all these things that, although they're brief, because the main point is to talk about the main plot being the hunt for the carrion spike, the ship. When it comes up, it feels natural, and I think James Luceno does a really excellent job with that. There are times where, you know, yeah, knowing how it has to end kind of brings it down, but it doesn't ruin it. It's kind of a flip of the coin kind of thing. Depends on how you feel about that, I suppose. I enjoyed it knowing that Tarkin would, of course, win, and Vader and the Empire. There's also this sort of gray area where the rebels start talking about themselves as the good guys, but the way that he says it, it's kind of like he knows what he's saying is not true, that they're not necessarily any better. They're just different, but you'd have to read it. It's a small moment. It's really great, I think. There are points where the politics are kind of dry. And I'm not the kind of person that thinks politics are ever dry. They're mostly awful in the real world, and even in fictional worlds, they can be horrifying. I'm reading 1984 now, and it is horrifying. But, like when they're talking about Count Dooku and some of these other positions that Tarkin found himself in, it's just, I just don't care that much, because I want to talk about this journey that they're going on to find the Emperor. And, you know, it's great that it follows the Emperor, Darth Vader, and Tarkin, and the rebels themselves. I don't think there's more than 3 different stories. I think it's those 3. There's parts with the Emperor, whether he's with Tarkin or not, or just people that are around him. Parts with Tarkin, wherever he is at Sentinel Base, on the carrion spike with Vader, or with Vader on the ship that they steal. And then there's the rebels from the rebel cell themselves when they're on the carrion spike, and it's really fun. I recommend it. I'm going to read more by James Luceno, more Star Wars novels, to see if his talent is consistent and not just in this book, because I think he's a great sort of hack writer, I guess. I don't know. I like his writing. Anyway, I recommend it if you like Star Wars and you want to see the bad guys win. So, yeah, bye.